Welcome to Writers Talk About Stuff, where writers talk about stuff. Today, Queerness and Spirituality. I'm Scott Coon, author of Godless Armageddon, right there. And I am here with Rie Lee, author of Vessel, a novel. We are going to talk about what our religious environments taught us about queerness, how we realized that we were queer, and how our spiritual journeys intertwined with our queer journeys, ultimately arriving at a place of peace. Hi, Rie. Thank you for being here. Let's start by having you tell us a little bit about your novel.
Thanks for having me. This is very exciting. So, Vessel is a book. Wow, I can't do this. Can you tell me what my book is about? Because I forgot. Okay, so it's a religious deconstruction book about a queer girl who's growing up in a post-apocalyptic Fresno and is super gay, but can't own up to that sense of her, that aspect of her identity, and that basically just sort of squashes everything inside her. So much so to the point where she is willing to become a human sacrifice for the good of her community, rather than admit that she's gay. And to make things worse, she's in love with her best friend, who is a lot less religious than her, but still follows the rules or whatever. And that's all well and good until the main character's brother is arrested, and then our main character has to... So, okay, the brother's arrested, the best friend gets arrested, and then the main character has to decide when enough is enough for her, in terms of buying into this cult. Okay.
And does it have a happy ending? Can you tell us? No, it does not have a happy ending.
Okay. It depends on what you think of as a happy ending. So this book in particular started out as a retelling of The Giver, which thank you to Sean Bestel, who was my graduate mentor, for calling me out on that, because that was bad. But if you know the ending of The Giver, there's sort of like a question mark ending to it, where Jonas, the protagonist, is able to get out of his cult, and you're not really sure whether they survive or not.
Okay.
But I also think that survival isn't really the answer to the question that they're asking.
Okay.
So, there's that.
So tell me a little bit about where your religious journey started.
Okay, so I was born in Fresno, which is why the book takes place there. Nailed it. And Fresno is a really small place. It's not a small place. It's the 5th largest city in California, but and with that, it was like 500,000 people as of, I want to say, the 2010 census. So I'm sure it's more than that now. But it is it's a place where I don't know how much of this is because it's in the San Joaquin Valley, but my experience of Fresno was that it was a very like religious place. Okay. Not in any one religion. There's a really large diversity of religions in Fresno. But when I was in high school, when I was raised as a Baptist by 2 ex-Catholics, and the only reason that they were ex-Catholics is because their priest said some choice words to them that, and so my parents were like defending me, which thanks.
But I have a complicated relationship with the Catholic Church myself, but go on.
You don't say. So my parents were like, nah, screw this. Let's go be Baptists instead, because when you get kicked out of the Catholic Church, you go be a Baptist, apparently.
So how old were you when that happened?
This was before I was born.
Oh, really?
So I was born into the Baptist church.
Okay.
And Central Valley is not like, it's not like the South, but it is quite conservative. Mm-hmm. And when I think I really don't see a whole lot of difference between the like moral values of being Baptist compared to the moral values of being Catholic. Like, there's still a lot of, you know, you can't, there's, the can't list is the same. So, okay. Like, you know, no premarital sex, you can't be gay, you can't have abortions, you can't, you know, like, you can't swear, you can't use the Lord's name in vain, like, all these things.
Okay.
And as, I don't think that my parents were particularly invested in, like, the Baptist theology specifically as a denomination. I think that's just kind of where they landed. One day I would like to know how they chose that church in particular, but in a lot of ways it was a very fundamentalist experience, okay. Because it's very evangelical. So when I was 8, I was baptized in that church. Mm-hmm. And I still remember so many of those songs. It's kind of ridiculous. And at that point, let me think here. I mean, we did. It wasn't like a bad experience, I think, at that
okay.
age, because for me it was like not necessarily a place of belonging, because I don't think I really had a whole lot of that in general growing up. I think I had spent so much time trying to contort myself into the places where I was supposed to belong, in so many ways, that I just never really felt at home in any of them, which is a really sad thing to say now that I'm saying it out loud. But, like, you know, there's so many things I know about myself now that I didn't know then. Like, I'm autistic, I did not know that then. ADHD, didn't know that then. Queer, didn't know that then. Have a weird relationship with being Latina because my dad is Mexican, my mom's Spanish and French, she's got some Jewish in there, and so it's like this weird amalgamation of, like, I'm very white passing, and so when you live in a place that's like 50+% Mexican, and then you're also Mexican but you look white, there's a lot of imposter syndrome that goes with that.
Okay.
Especially when you're like a super nerd. Like, that's not really, you know, as, I don't know, I was a very sensitive kid, so okay. No one is surprised. Anyway, so I was raised Baptist. When I was in like middle school, we moved to a different house, because I was fortunate enough to have been raised in a house. And when we moved to the other side of town, we decided to go to a different church. And okay. This church was a non-denominational church. And I don't think we were ever really like regular church attenders when I was in middle school. I think primary school I was, and it was to the point where I was, you know, I had been baptized. When you're baptized as an 8-year-old, you are entrusted with, you stand in front of an entire congregation, mm-hmm. and you declare that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. Did you get baptized?
I was baptized as an infant, and then
okay,
I took all these after-school classes so that I could get the confirmation.
That's right.
And then that all ended like right before the confirmation would have happened. So I was never actually confirmed.
You were unconfirmed.
I'm unconfirmed. I have no confirmation name.
Oh, you got a new name?
Yeah. For a Catholic, you get a second middle name when you get a confirmation. You pick the name of the saint.
That's right. Oh, I wonder what my dad's was. I wonder if my mom got confirmed. I have no idea. I totally forgot about that. When you're Baptist, you don't get that. When you're Jewish, I'm pretty sure you get like a Jewish name specifically when you get bat mitzvahed.
I did not know that.
I'm like 90+% positive about that, but I will look it up and put it in the, I don't know, you can put like a thing.
put it in a comment.
Wait. This will be the place where Scott will tell me if I'm right or not. Anyway, so like, but I know Mormons do too.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's like a baptism, I forget what it is, or you're like temple endowed, I think is the terminology. I did a bunch of research on that for my book too, for reasons I'll explain in a minute. But actually, by the time I got into high school, I went to school with a whole bunch of Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
So I think actually when I was in primary school, part of the reason that I was so religious because I went to a religious school. So I went to a Church of the Nazarene school.
Oh.
I don't really know what that is, but I know
Neither do I.
We went to chapel on Wednesdays, and we had ice cream Wednesdays if you had pink cards the whole week. And by golly, I had pink cards the whole week, except for once in second grade when I called somebody a witch. It was a problem. I'm very ashamed of it.
Huh.
Yeah. Anyway, but I mean, I was like a good kid, and then like I like said something mean about another kid, and it was like the only black kid in our class, and so like retroactively, I'm like, Rie, shut the fuck up. Like,
oh
what
man,
are you doing?
Oh,
and she was a sweet kid. Like I liked her, so I don't know what it was. I think I was just having an off day because I got bullied a lot. But anyway, yeah, no, I'm sure she's doing well now, and I think I apologize years later, but. Or probably after that moment because I had to write my name over and over again or something like that. I don't remember. Anyway, so after I went to like a really religious school. I had like a couple of Mormon friends at that school, which I did not realize until later. And it's funny because during that time my mom was very much like, well, Mormons are not Christian. And so there was this big thing about, like, who qualifies as Christian and who doesn't. There's a lot of gatekeeping that's involved in that. And I think that, on the whole, a large part of Christianity is gatekeeping. There's a lot of, like, who was allowed to identify as this, and then, what do you have to do to be included in the in-group? And if you're part of that in-group, then you're safe, and if you're not, you're, not.
I didn't know until my teen years that Catholics were a minority in America and were actually discriminated against up until the time of John F. Kennedy. I think
What?
John F. Kennedy was our first Catholic president. And I'll correct
There's only
myself.
two, right?
I correct myself. Yeah, I think Joe Biden's the other one.
That's right.
And I'll correct myself in some kind of note right here if I'm wrong. But yeah. I had no idea until I saw a documentary about JFK talking about he was the first Catholic president and he had to get past the prejudice against Catholics. I did not know about that because in the area where I grew up, it was mostly Catholic. It was a big Catholic parish in Pennsauken, New Jersey that surrounded me. There were Protestants, but it felt like we were the biggest group, but I could have been wrong.
That's wild.
And
I think like when you become like this when you're in a minority space, you tend to surround yourself with more minorities, and then you are in a culture where you can be the majority because you don't have to hide.
Yeah, because you're your own little node of Catholics in this case.
Which is how I feel being a queer person now, because I'm like I never really feel like. As a queer person, I never really feel what's it called when people are like, oh, I don't feel prejudiced against. Like I don't feel like people are prejudiced towards me for being bi. Like that's just not a thing that I've experienced, and I think it's because it's the same thing, right? Minority population attracts minority population, creates kind, inclusive space for that population that's designed to support the people in that group, and then I forget that sometimes people don't like queers. And then we're like in this pocket of California where, we're very privileged to have this space. And
yes.
Anyway.
And even within that safe space that is LA, which is mostly really safe for, queer folk, there's the writing community that I have that you're a part of. And that community is extra super welcoming to all of us. So that's really good.
Yes, 1,000%. So by the time I was in middle school, we went to this other church, and at that church, Scott, I would like to tell you about the 3 kinds of kisses that we learned about on Valentine's Day in youth group.
This sounds interesting.
Oh, it's great.
Please go.
This is for all you out there. There's the peach, the prune, and the alfalfa. That is what I learned in Sunday school. I mean,
the hell were they talking about that
by Sunday? A middle-aged white dude who was... I don't know why on earth that they would have, like, a middle-aged white dude say that to, like, a bunch of teenagers.
Are you sure he was authorized?
Who are being taught abstinence-only education. I don't understand. No, I am not sure that he was authorized. And so many things I look back on during those, like, that point in my life, and I'm like, all of this was like a giant red flag. Like, you know when you like watch those like troubled teen documentaries?
Yeah.
Or if you like watch any of those like like there's been like a big problem in the Catholic Church where like, kids are getting molested by the priests, and you're like, well, duh, there was this red flag and this red flag and this red flag, and like if you have these situations where people are isolated, obviously like people are going to be able to take advantage of that, and that's why you need more transparency. But like when you're in it, and like at the time, it's not that at all. And honestly, I feel like that's the big thing that I want to get, that I like to talk about in my writing, because it's very easy to sort of dismiss people as being like, oh well, the same thing that I just said, right? Like, well, duh. But I think the tricky thing about cults in particular is that they're sneaky because you believe, and your belief is part of your identity, and your identity, your sense of safety, like your fight or flight response, has, when you're in that deep, has to do with pleasing the people around you and convincing yourself that those things are not only okay, but to be aspired towards. And so like when, I think that's why I didn't like question a lot of this until my senior year of high school, when I took a Shakespeare and mythology class.
Okay.
And when we were in the mythology class, we learned about the Norse myths. And we, and a couple of Greco-Roman, and then also the Norse. There was probably like 1 or 2 other cultures in there, but let's be real. So we're just gonna stick with the hard hitters. And at that point, I realized we were studying like a flood myth, and I was like, wait a second, this is Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
This is Noah's Ark. This is the same story. And then I think the Greeks and Romans had their own version of a flood myth, and then a few other cultures did
Mesopotamians, it goes all the way back.
Right?
Yep.
And so at that point I was like, this must be a thing that happened, because, I was starting to sort of understand more about like historical evidence in a lot of these kinds of things. And in that moment I was like, Christianity cannot be the only true version of history and spirituality and religion. It's just one name for it. And that was the moment where I was like, I don't even think I embraced the term agnostic until like long after that, but it was a really like pivotal moment for me, because I was 16 years old. I was about to graduate from high school, and when I turned 17 that summer, and then moved to Irvine for undergrad, and then joined the Presbyterian group. but I also joined a Jewish sorority, so it was like
just branching out.
I really was. And actually the first thing that I was part of when I went to undergrad was this thing called InterVarsity.
Okay.
Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay. So it's basically a non-denominational Christian like college organization. But much like Hillel, which is the Jewish version of like a college organization, InterVarsity has feel like I'm going to be in trouble if I say a lot of this stuff. Okay. So InterVarsity is it's not limited to just Irvine. It's not limited to just California. It's like it's a collegiate experience. Lots of chapters and things like that. And they weren't very formal or whatever, but we would have small group meetings in the dorms, which was the main reason that I went, because I was like, oh, cool, I'm just gonna like show up and this will be my like spiritual whatever. Okay. For some reason, I think I still felt a need for that at that point. It was still important to me that I like show up to a small group or whatever, or maybe somebody came around with a flyer. That's how it always starts. And I got to know the kids in my small group, and I really liked it. And then I liked them, and I liked this space to be open and to pray. And there was one time when I prayed in a Southern accent, and it was extremely offensive, probably. People chuckled throughout the prayer, but I'm pretty sure that the small group leader was really pissed off. And then, like on Thursdays, they have this thing called Praxis, and they take a lecture hall, one of the smaller lecture halls, and all the kids come in, and they have like the hands, like I'm going to sing lots of songs and be like, we're going to feel Jesus in here. And
I've been to a number of kinds of...
Have you been to the mega church?
I've never been to a mega church.
Okay.
I was an evangelical for a short period of time back in the 80s.
I've been an evangelical probably most of my life, but about different things. But yeah, that's in the 80s?
Yeah, it was, I don't know if they really called them evangelicals. It was like born again Christians was what they called themselves. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I joined the group because of a cute girl. And over time, I was re-Christianized slightly. And then they wanted to start gathering money to build a building. And I'm like,
smart.
I'm out.
Smart.
I'm out.
Smart. I actually, come to think of it, I don't think I ever did a church thing because of somebody I was romantically interested in, except for my sophomore year of high school. Because there was a boy I was very, very keen on, and he was like the kind of person who he was also a military person. But he was like a Christian military boy. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you know the type, right? Like this is like an archetype at this point. Like how many of them did you see?
I had a sergeant over me that I'm not going to discuss any further, but yes.
So he was very cute, very white, very I don't know. Now looking back, I'm like, he wasn't that cute, but I guess I always had like a thing for more effeminate looking men, and he's more like on this like but yeah, so he was sweet in that way, right? But he was also like very religious, and I'm pretty sure his dad was a pastor. This was the kind of family who like adopted children from various countries. He had at least 2 black sisters or something like that, and it was like I got invited to a pool party at his house, and I had to wear a tankini, and I got in trouble a little bit because I didn't have as much of a back. So it was like, you know what I mean? So it was like I don't even know, 15 years old or something.
Yeah.
And like, everyone wears 2 pieces when you're 15, except the fundies. And when I say fundies, I mean fundamentalists. And I don't know if you've seen the YouTube channel Fundy Fridays, but if you haven't, you absolutely should. It's great. There's a lot of discussion about various kinds of fundamentalism, and I think the kind that doesn't really get discussed a lot is the sort of mainstream Christianity fundamentalism, which is how I feel like I grew up. And then you also sort of like add on this aspect of Latin culture, which is very much like closed. Like at least in my experience growing up Mexican and Spanish, it's very like we were very much encouraged to sort of keep things in the family.
Okay.
So, that we don't go to therapy because we have our family to rely on. Or we, if we're having a family problem, we're going to keep it within the family. We're not going to tell other people about it because it's not their business. It's family business. And then, everything is about the family. So, you grow up with no boundaries. to the point that when you start going through puberty, you feel like you have a responsibility to tell your dad when you got your first kiss. And like, oh yeah, I sat down in his office across the desk from him, and I was like, Dad.
My parents still don't know about my first kiss.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm building boundaries now, but and not everyone was happy about it. But anyway, so when I did the college thing, did the quasi-funded non-denominational Christian thing, where we had like Sister Appreciation Day instead of Valentine's Day. The kind of thing where we call each other's brothers and sisters of Christ, or brothers and sisters in Christ. Like there's sort of like a lot of lingo that goes along with it too, like like in Heavenly Father, or now I'm getting it confused with all the Mormon stuff that I watch, but like there's a lot of that. So then at the same time, I'm like also joining this Jewish sorority, and in that sense, I sort of got involved in the less religious parts of Judaism. But I also was very much of this mindset of like, because I was coming from the space of like, there's more than just Christianity, I was really dedicated to finding the commonalities between my experience of religion and other people's experience of religion.
Okay.
So I was really dedicated to like mapping this to this. And I think I really liked how Shabbat services were. So I went to Shabbat services, pretty frequently. Whenever like some of the other sorority members were going to go, I was going to go too. I mean, it's free dinner on a Friday night as a college student. Like, hell yeah. Sometimes there's wine. Like, it's great. And it was fun. Like, the women in the sorority were all, like, super chill. They were, like, they liked to take pride in the fact that when I joined, it was a local sorority.
Uh-huh.
And it was the only sorority with a lesbian president.
Oh, really?
The only one on campus.
Good for them.
I know, right? But then we went national. And that fell apart pretty quickly. But anyway, it was sort of a lot more of exploration of like the Jewish side of my own identity, even though I was very... I didn't know I was Jewish at that point.
Okay.
I found out I was Jewish after I was done with the sorority stuff.
Okay.
And so
you're having this Jewish experience.
Oh, yeah.
That was tied to your heritage, and you had no idea that it was tied to your heritage.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a pledge class of 2. It was me and then my pledge sister, and we were like, oh yeah, we're the only completely non-Jewish like pledge class in the sorority, and we still got all the services and everything. No. She ruined it too. We both found out that we have Jewish heritage, and we were like, well, oh well. Not oh well, but like hooray in a lot of ways, because I feel like we were able to understand it better because of that. Anyway, so after that point, I started going to this like Presbyterian church, and then Proposition 8 was a thing. I'm dating myself, I know. I know. I'm very young, I get it.
Tell us what Proposition 8 was.
Proposition 8 in the state of California was a state proposition for the 2008 ballot. For the 2008 national election, where we had to decide on this concept of marriage equality, in terms of like whether it was redefining what marriage meant. So and the way that it was phrased was really tricksy. It was a huge deal in my entire life. It was everywhere. I'm sure it was a big deal in your life too.
Oh yeah, I remember that going through. Yeah.
Were you in California at the time?
No, I was in the East Coast somewhere.
All right, but you're from California. No, you're from New Jersey.
Fun irony of my life, which is just full of little ironies. I was born in Linwood, California, in the county of Los Angeles. Before I was out of diapers, my parents moved back to Philadelphia, where I grew up. entire childhood was in and around Philadelphia, and now I'm back.
How is that ironic?
Because I am now living where I was born, where I never lived before.
Oh, is that irony? I always feel like I get tripped up on what irony actually means. I just know that it's not a Alanis Morissette song.
Well, it might not be ironic, it might be alienic, but no, it's weird that I moved away from where I grew up to where I was born.
I like it. I like it. I moved away and I stayed away. So, Prop 8. I was struggling with it really hard. Because I was 18. I was like barely 18 at this point in time. Like I turned 18 that July, and then November was the election.
Mm-hmm.
We were all really excited to vote for Barack Obama. I don't even think that was even a question for me. That was like the only thing I knew about the election was that Barack Obama and Prop 8.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know there were going to be other questions on the test.
She got in the voting booth and you're like, I didn't study for this.
Yes! No, straight up! It was like the SATs all over again. It was awful. And so I vowed to never do that again. And I don't remember if it was that year or a different one after that, but I think I did another election after that. And then by the time, because I was 8, 12 is when I graduated. Same kind of thing, but I think I did the mail-in ballot at that point. And then the next election, I finally was just like, hey, can someone study with me? And so now, every time there's an election, if it's a big election, small election, a one-question election, I don't care, I vote in every single one of them. And I now have a website called votingstudyparty.org.
Oh, very cool. Check that out.
Yeah. And it's got a bunch of resources that are used to sort of make a study guide out of all of the down ballot issues, because those end up being the things that are the most critical.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got together with some friends, one of whom went to high school with me. Excellent. Where I was going through some of this religious crisis. Actually, 2 of which now. Hooray. We have this website. It's pretty great. And a lot of it has to do with de-escalating the conversation around it. Which makes it a lot more practical and makes it easier to sort of digest. It's like, instead of studying for a test, California's got a take-home test, so we're okay here. And you can just sort of have your notes with you and be like, okay, I wanted to do this, boop, this, boop, great. I thought about it ahead of time. I've talked about it with people in a way where I'm not going to jeopardize any of my relationships. We're okay. Anyway, at the time I didn't have any of this, and I was really struggling because it felt like a question of identity for myself. Mm-hmm. And this is even before I knew I was queer. I was dating a boy. I was very, okay with where I was. I still had. I was always a questioning kind of person in terms of faith. And over time, I think I got more questioning about it. And at the point where I was at that time, I was going to this college group at the Presbyterian Church. And that was like my religious refuge, because I could ask any question I wanted to. And the pastor was a scientist, and he really liked to approach all of these God questions from a more empirical perspective. Okay. But he also wasn't one of those people who was just like, science is really God. Right? You know what I mean? Like, there were people who did that kind of stuff, and he was not one of those people. He was just very practical. And he was very sort of like, I think I like asked him, I did ask him this big thing about Prop 8. And I was like, what do you do? Like, Jesus says that, like, you're not supposed to have same-sex marriage. Okay, Jesus didn't actually say that, but...
We'll set that aside.
Yes.
Moving on.
Here's the box. But that's what I believe. Okay, not Jesus. The Bible says it, right?
The Bible says it.
Like, in the Bible, there's this thing where you can't marry... Like, I can't marry another lady. Mm-hmm. Not that I care about marrying a lady at that point in time, but, like, I was like, I know gay people, but, like... I understand. I mean, this means they can't get married, but also, like, why are we even talking about marriage from a legal perspective in the first place?
Yeah.
So I got, like, a really interesting sort of middle ground answer to that question, because I felt like if I voted one way, I would be betraying my belief system, where I was much more tolerant of queer people than most of the kids I grew up, or most of the people I grew up with, and the people I was raised by. And on the other hand, if I voted the other way, I would be betraying all the people who raised me and all of the communities I was represented by at that point in my life. So
you're stuck at this crossroads. What happened?
Yeah. So I wrote on my ballot. So I'm pretty sure it never got counted, but I wrote abstain.
Abstain? You wrote abstain on
I was like, I don't want anyone to circle one of them for me. Abstain. Yeah, I abstained because my conclusion of all of this was that marriage should not be a legal thing in the first place. Like, everyone should get civil unions. I don't care if you are religious or not, and leave the question of marriage to the church or whatever religious entity is your, deciding ground. And everyone gets civil unions. The end. Like, that's what equality is supposed to be about anyway. It wasn't until much later that my friend was like, but that's what a no vote means. It means that you don't want them to redefine it. And I was like, oh. But at the time, it was like the most empathetic thing that I could have possibly done. And it was a very big deal. Like, the thing that my pastor said to that question of, like, what do we do about this, is he said, the one thing that comes up over and over again in the Bible is that when people judge each other, they get smitten. So that's not for us to decide. And I leave that judgment to God. Or whatever.
As you should.
Right. And I thought that was the most brilliant thing, because I was like, you're right. It's not for me to decide. This isn't, like, who's to say if this interpretation of the Bible was right or wrong? Like, maybe there were things that I didn't know still. And he was so, like, he didn't want to be political, but he wanted to be moral. And he wanted to do it in a kind and compassionate way, and I think he nailed it on the head. So, like, I have many, many problems with the Christian church as a whole, but, like, that moment in particular taught me a few things. One, there were genuinely Christians who cared about the queer community. You could be queer and Christian at the same time. And the concept of having evidence and faith were not mutually exclusive, but perhaps they weren't as binarily defined as I thought.
Okay.
Defined as I might have thought they would be. So after that, I kept going to this group for a while, and then after a while, I met. Was it after that? I don't remember. I think I was doing some Googling.
Okay.
As one does, and I was really interested. I've always been really interested in fundamentalism. You said something earlier about, I don't remember what it was. I think it was something about the military.
Oh yeah, I had a religious person in my chain of command, and in hindsight, I have to wonder if it had a negative impact on my military career. You noticed my medals when you came in here. There were several medals that I've been turned down for, that with no explanation. My Joint Service Achievement Award was downgraded from a higher medal. So
because you had atheist on your dog tags?
I had atheist on my dog tags, and
were you very loud and proud about it?
I had a sergeant in my chain of command, and I'm not going to say what his rank was. I'm not going to say what his position was, but I am going to say that he showed me what was very, very obviously anti-abortion propaganda. And I pointed it out to him.
I said, work?
Outside of work, but I think we were actually in uniform at the time, so technically we
That's
were
at
work. Yeah, it was not okay. In hindsight, I should have at the very least, filed an MFR, a memorandum for record, about that incident. And, which is just, hey, Army, this thing happened. Let's not forget about the thing that happened, in case we need to circle back on it at a later date.
Circle back.
Mm-hmm.
Circle back.
So
20 years later, here we are circling back.
So the acting in it was so bad that I told him I've seen after-school specials with better acting. And do you really believe that an abortion doctor in an interview would say, yes, my profession should be made illegal and I should be arrested?
Oh, no.
Do you think an abortion doctor would say that? He was the first person to show me the term post-birth abortion. And he showed me this thing. It's so true. Look at it. It's a piece of paper that somebody printed out. That's a diagram of how to do it. I'm like, where did this come from? Where did you get it? Who produced this? Is it a part of a hospital's records or something? Anybody could have just drawn this and just printed it and handed it out. So,
yeah. And I didn't know to ask any of those questions at that point in my life either. Like when I was in the early stages of deconstructing and when I was in those deep stages of belief, it was very much like if somebody showed me evidence of it, I would believe that evidence because I believed that people were earnest. And if you were earnest, then you were telling the truth because you were being earnest about it. And not that you were, if you said a cruel thing, it wasn't because you were being cruel. It was because that was your deeply held belief. And to you, that was a truth. And I always second-guessed myself because other people seemed so convicted by what they were saying that it felt like I was missing out on something. So all of the holes of like Jesus, what is it that they like to say? Like God is omnipotent and omniscient, but we're all born sinners. So like, why are we born sinners? Why? If God made us in His image, then why are we born sinners? Is God a sinner?
It strikes me this only now in this moment.
Really?
If we're made in God's image and we're all sinners, is God a sinner? He did kill a lot of people in the Old Testament. A lot of untoward activity occurred in the Old Testament, quite frankly.
But no one talks about how mean God is.
Yeah.
I think it was actually in that youth group in college when I started realizing God's really mean. And anyway, that's beside the point. But I do research now for my MLIS that I'm working on, which is a Master's of Library and Information Sciences. And the thing that I'm really keen on researching is the intersection of trust and information. Okay. So how people look for information, especially in this age of like AI and people interacting with AI chatbots and asking them things like like really personal things or violent things or something like that. And like how we as humans design those things, and can we help prevent suicides or prevent violence by how we program chatbots. I am very much interested in how people who are in cults or other kinds, I call them high control environments because cults is kind of a pejorative word, but it's an easy thing for readers to sort of tune in. It's a good buzzword. So I like to use it in terms of like buzzwords, but in terms of like actual research, high control environment. Through my research, I found a couple of things. One is that high control environments, I call them environments instead of groups because they can happen also between two people. There's also, but it's basically, it's not, high control environments are not dogma specific. They can happen, the dogma is like an accessory to the control. Because it's not about the belief, it's about the control.
And a lot of the times you'll find out that the dogma isn't even followed by the people who are espousing it.
So, especially if it's about the control. Like that's the whole point.
Yep, that's the whole
point. You use the dogma as like a treat.
Yes.
Right? Like, if you just follow this, you'll go to heaven.
Yeah.
Or you'll become a new person, or you'll find peace and happiness. And it's just not true. So, but you don't believe that.
Tell you some fun facts about the Nazis. First of all, because we're
not
talking
as about I thought I was going to be hearing today.
Talking about controlled environments and dogma that they don't follow. The Nazis did business with Jewish people. One of the main weapon suppliers to Hitler was a Jewish man, and they all just pretended it wasn't a thing. And also, you'd think that with all their rhetoric, the Hitler Youth was like the chosen ones. They're the next generation of special supermen. They worked, many of them, to death building the Autobahn. So even by their own measure, by their own rhetoric, Hitler's Nazis were the worst human beings on Earth. So, yeah, for dogma.
I didn't know that.
This is true.
And I will go research it later, because I
Please
did not
do.
know that, and because I have learned recently that I cannot trust everything that I hear for the first time as fact.
Nope.
So that is a good lesson
Research.
to everyone here: is whatever we say, research it yourself too. but that ultimately is sort of the big through line of everything that we're talking about. It's like the things that we decide to accept for ourselves, belief or fact alike, whether there's evidence or whether there isn't. There's an element of having to decide for yourself. And when you're in a high control environment, you cannot decide that for yourself, because you risk being put on the out. And when you get put on the out, that is the fight or flight response. That is, if you are out in cave people times, you die.
And they're
It is literally
stirring that
never
back
done.
up inside you in order to exert control.
That's is it the amygdala response? I gotta look all this shit up. The other thing that I learned was that the U.S. We were talking about the presidents and how only 2 of them have been Catholic.
Yes.
Scandalous. But the thing, I was thinking, like, what is it with all of the Protestant, like, why are we so obsessed with Protestantism? And something that I realized was that I came across this quote somewhere in my research, that it was like, ultimately the United States was created by a cult.
Mm-hmm.
The Puritans were a cult.
Yeah.
Not something that I thought about, because when I was in my Christian primary school, we dressed up as Puritans and Native Americans, which we did not call Native Americans. Like,
No.
We told this, like, happy story to ourselves about how they came together and shared a feast. And, like, you wore the little things and you made the little paper hats, and, it was very exciting. And I never thought of the Puritans as a cult until maybe a couple of years ago. Maybe even just last year. I think probably it was when I was researching this paper, because so much of it was, it's this sort of narrative that we're fed, not just as Christians, but as a nation, of there's this minority who's in religious persecution. And it's true, they were persecuted. They had, their churches were burned down. Like, that is a real thing that happened to them, and that should not be repeated. You should not burn down churches. Don't burn down any spiritual places, okay? Don't burn anything.
Don't burn anything down.
Just don't burn shit. It's a waste of fuel. And we have forest fires around here, okay? Like, we can. Anyway, so the thing about, like, the Puritans is, like, the fact that I didn't think about them as a cult or as a marginalized belief community until a couple of years ago, I think says a lot about the norms with which I was raised.
Yeah.
And I think that the norms that I was raised in are not uncommon for a lot of people who grew up in the area where I grew up, but also most people in the U.S. Like, we do, if you have light skin in this country, you probably are the result of this Puritan takeover in some way or another. You know, the kinds of diaspora that comes from that means that the Puritan ideology really spread across the culture, and so that's who was in power, that's who was in charge. That culture has now come down to us however many hundred years later, and has permeated every facet of our society, including a middle-aged white man telling me about the peach, the prune, and the alfalfa. So, right, that's the thing that gave permission for that situation to happen.
Yeah, and we've had so many opportunities through history where we could have broken this pattern, and then we're just, right now, as we're sitting here talking right now, we're circling back into it. And I really thought that the last time that
in some ways, I think there's hope, but we can get to that.
Yeah, and I think there's hope too, but, you know, I did not expect this to be the situation that we're in right now. I thought that we'd broken it and it was over. Like after Proposition 8 and after all the TV shows, we were like, yeah, well, we'll throw a gay character in there and we'll even have a whole show that's surrounded a gay character. I thought it was finally over. We were going to be decent human beings. My mistake.
Yeah. I think, but I think that's the other thing that I like to write about, because my next book is more, so Vessel is more of a right-wing extremism. Mm-hmm. My next book is more of a left-wing extremism.
Okay.
And I think that in a lot of ways, I feel like without the internet, pretty much all of us are centrist. Like,
you know what?
The main reason that people feel like they have to have an opinion on something is because of social media. Like, if you don't speak up about something, then your friends all think that you have the wrong opinion, because there is a right and a wrong opinion. Despite the fact that things are so nuanced that you shouldn't have a binary opinion about basically anything. Like, because at the end of the day, you can say, like, I don't like abortions, or I do like pregnancy for people. But then when it comes down to the practicalities, that's the implementation of it. That's where everything is really nuanced, and there's no binary answer to any of that. So all of this big picture stuff just gets boiled down to choices, and the choices are never binary.
I think that we think of left and right in the wrong way. We should think of it as up and down, and it should be a circle, not a line. And when you go around the circle, yes. And if you go around the circle either direction from the top, where you actually have sane, tolerant policies that actually help the people, that actually serve the people, that actually serve justice. And if you go either left or right far enough, you'll reach the bottom where it's totalitarianism.
That's interesting. I think the problem is that you have to define justice. And you have to define helpful. And you have to define people.
Yeah, and it's got to be simple definitions.
With anything, though. But that's the trouble with anything, because if you oversimplify it, right, it becomes all about the dogma. Mm-hmm. If you make it too complicated, it becomes, again, all about the fine print. Mm-hmm. And, again, the dogma. So I feel like that's the... I definitely think I'm not surprised, as somebody who writes apocalyptic fiction, that we are where we are. Mm-hmm. Because so much of the stuff that's around us lends itself to doom and gloom. And, especially the way that we tend to consume media. I tend to consume media. It can be very doom and gloom. For this reason, I have started to subscribe to a good news newsletter, which has been delightful, because every one of the stories that it delivers is good news. So it's interesting how you can curate good news and bad news, right? Like, I just think that's fascinating. Like, as an information researcher, like, there is good news. It does exist. It's just a matter of where you find it and how much do you open or close yourself to it. And I think that comes right back down to this question of religion and your sense of identity, because your sense of identity is how much you open yourself to a certain parameter, parameter set of beliefs, and whatever belief system that you're that's being suggested to you, and then you decide, do I open myself to it, do I close myself to it, how much of it, how much does it take over me, and how much of it am I in relation to it? How separate or together are we? And for, I think, a lot of people, the religion and the self are enmeshed. And you can't, because, and to a certain point, when you are so enmeshed that you've not just dedicated your belief system to it, but you've also dedicated your physical existence, so your assets and your time and your like income source.
Yeah.
When you start dedicating those things also, which is very easy to do because, again, dogma, right? You believe in the dogma, and if you believe it, don't be all talk and no action. Be action. So the talk turns into the action, then everything that you've got is tied up in there, and then it's too late. You can't escape. So even if you do wake up, or you do decide, oh no, this isn't really me, you can't get out at that point.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are experiencing that in the United States right this
1000%.
minute.
1000%. And I think that it's not just left or right wing. I think it's very much like, it's very much just sort of like the whether you have your basic needs met or not. Whether you have, and by basic needs, I don't mean food, shelter, by itself. I also mean healthcare, including mental health care, because a lot of the basic needs stuff, or the ostracization that people have towards, things like there was a school that recently had a gun threat in my community, and I remember that I think the principal of the school referred to, at least one of the like parents who was talking about it said, it's so sad that we have these just like sick, mentally sick people who are like, just got nothing better to do all day than to just threaten schools.
Yeah.
And I'm like, like on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, it is really sad that that's the thing that people are focusing on doing. But you can't take away this element of they don't have their basic needs met. So of course they're going to do messed up stuff. Of course. Like, we're not putting them in an environment where that doesn't happen. So it's not just their fault, it's ours too.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a shared like experience and reality of that.
And the needs are like, all our basic needs are not being met right now. Like from food to the option to actually succeed in life. There's like, success really is...
Because they're all connected.
Yeah.
You can't get anywhere if you can't have energy.
Yeah.
Food is literally calories, which is energy. Like, you can't...
Yeah, even if you have a job that gives you food, you really don't have the option of succeeding like we used to.
Yeah.
And I often think about, what my job would afford me in a 1970 economy, what the salary would be, and what I'd be doing with it. And then I look around at what I've got, and then I say mean words that are very not for YouTube.
I just, what's funny is that I'm like going through like a sort of job transition right now, and there's a lot that I'm running towards, but there's also a lot that I'm running from, and the things that I'm running from seem like this just giant insurmountable thing, but in reality, when I take several steps back, I can see that it's still a very viable, reliable mechanism towards keeping my family and myself alive.
Yes.
And all things considered is not that bad. So that's partially what I mean also about like the leftist extremism too, because it's so easy sometimes to be like, like you cut our DEIA funding, therefore like this is all evil. And like, I can't be part of this anymore. But I think that that's also going too far in the other direction, where we're like, okay, this is a setback. This is, like, I'm a very big believer in diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility programs, programming and intention and planning and strategy, but not where it's just like a name, right? And if it's a program, it's just a name. What's the name of the funding behind it?
Yeah, and what is that funding doing? Yeah.
It does a lot of good if you know how to direct it in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot, like when you cut that, you lose a lot, but you haven't lost everything. And I think that that's something that's very common in this more bifurcated like environment where it's like if you lose one small thing, it feels like you've lost a really big thing. And that's more and more isolating the more that we're in this like, you know, information landscape where we're all, you know, just a couple of clicks away from the dark web and and all of the...
And by the dark web, it's the dark elements on the web, not the dark web itself.
That is true. That is true. Anyway, the thing that this keeps coming back to is like, I spend a lot of time thinking about fundamentalism and
mm-hmm.
extremism, and how all of those things are connected. Because at the end of the day, you know, I went to church, to camps, right? I went
mm-hmm.
to church camp when I was a kid. It was a blast. I had a great time. I went to this place called Camp Sugar Pine for a weekend.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
It was awesome. It was so cool. I was in, what cabin was I in? I always remember it now because I like didn't know this word when I went there, and now I'm of course blanking on what it was. I don't remember. I'll think about it and I'll let you know if I remember. But anyway, I had a sleeping bag and I was in the cabin. I was like on, like if this is the cabin, I was on this wall. I think I was on the bottom bunk, and then the bathroom was like right over here. And it was really cool because it was just like a bunch of Christian kids who were just
mm-hmm.
like coming in and just doing camp stuff. Like there was a mess hall and you could be part of kitchen patrol when you were done, and we were all serving each other in that way. And then we had these like, you know, team building activities, or we did charades and like, you know, I don't even know, like red light, green light or whatever. Like
all the camp stuff.
All the camp stuff, right? You stay up late and you have s'mores or whatever, although I think it was winter, so you don't do that. Yeah, and we had like a chapel part of
mm-hmm.
it too. And in the chapel part of it, it wasn't anything nefarious. It was very like, you know, we're here as Christians to give each other hope or whatever. Like very benign kind of shit. And there was like one, there were some like chants that people did, and like they were all very like, you know, it was like your chant for your cabin, right? Like, you know, Yellow Hills, let's go, or whatever it was. And very, very, very muted, benign stuff. And I think that a lot of times it's really easy to see Christianity in the United States as this giant behemoth of bad stuff. And it's easy to forget that there are those moments and programmings of genuine good, clean fun.
Yeah, I know at least one true good Christian who's an actual Christian that lives the philosophy of Christ.
I know several.
Yeah.
But most of them don't go to church.
Well, this fellow does, so.
I have a couple of friends who are churchgoers, and I tend to turn to them when I'm feeling down about politics, because mm-hmm. I remember that I'm friends with them for a reason. For many reasons,
yeah.
And every time I talk to them, I think over the years I've become less accusatory towards them, and I think that has, like, my presentation of the things that I'm anxious about has become much different, and I think that has allowed me to see them not quite as opposite me on the political spectrum, but very close to me, if leaning a different way personally.
Okay.
So, like, the things that like, we can have conversations about these things, not because we're, like, defying the odds or anything, but because I've learned how to say, like, I'm really worried about this thing, this very particular kind of thing. And the stuff that I'm hearing from the side of the aisle where you tend to live is fucking scary. Like, I am scared. And then my friend, who is a friend, is like, that's not what it sounds like on my end. Here's what it sounds like from the people I know. So then you're playing this more like close-knit game of phone tag.
Okay.
Or telephone, where you sort of like, okay, my neighbor is saying it like this. Like, you know, if it's about
You're getting reports from out of the bubble.
Exactly. So, like, about the Department of Education, right?
Yes.
like, you know, everyone was like freaking out. I was panicking. I was like, everything is being destroyed. The entire infrastructure, Rome is falling.
Yep.
And then my two slightly more conservative friends were just kind of like, but did the DOE really do anything? Sorry, Department of Education, not the DOE. Did they really do anything? And I was like,
Actually, they did a whole bunch of stuff, and a lot of programs got cut.
it's true.
Yeah.
But I didn't know which ones they were.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I realized. I was taking other people's word for it.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of the, you know, I've learned more about the sort of the role of the Department of Education and how there are certain standards that it sets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that it's valuable for, because when you set those standards, you have a common goal. When you have a strategic plan, then you make sure that everybody's there. When you have everyone there, you need to have common base level requirements.
Yes.
And then you dole out funding according to those base level requirements. That's how you do it in a corporation. So you're going to do it the same way in a country where you're trying to make sure that everybody has a bare minimum. And so that's how I look at it. I'm sure lots of people have different opinions or different interpretations, but I also started taking a step back and being like, is this really the end? And again, I write about apocalypses. That's my specialty. Part of the reason it's my specialty is because it takes a lot of time to imagine the specifics of being in an apocalypse. So when you are going into an apocalypse, how do you define apocalypse? What does falling down completely mean? And I think now that we've seen the Eaton and Palisades fires most recently, things can burn down, but then they also grow.
Yes.
And what grows in its place, and who's there to curate that,
Mm-hmm.
and how can we show up for each other in times of grief, and how much of this is actually everything collapsing wrongly, or how much of it is just an inevitability of years and years and years and years and years of disenfranchising people, left and right, literally. So, you know, like over time, a lot of these things, a lot of people will say, like, you know, vote blue no matter who, or, you know, like, never insert politician here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we fall into idealism rather than practicality.
Yes.
And in the practicality, it's about implementation. And when it comes down to it, the actions that we take are the implementation of our ideology. But really, the ideologies we have are about being friends. They're about taking care of our communities.
Yes.
And largely speaking, all the people I know, regardless of which side of the aisle they're on, want to take care of their communities. That is the point of having communities. So it's just a matter of, like, how do we get everybody into the middle to, like, find that space. But anyway, I got way off track.
Yes, we did.
Okay, right. So in fundy culture, you get married very young.
Yes.
And comparatively speaking, like, I think by the time I graduated high school, I think, like, right after high school, a few kids got married pretty instantaneously. Not instantaneously, immediately. Pretty immediately. And then maybe, like, a year, the 2 or 3 years, 4 years of my undergrad. I guess I was an undergrad for 5 years. So between when I graduated high school and when I finished undergrad, there were quite a few weddings from the kids in my high school. And I graduated in a graduating class of 84.
Oh, wow.
84 people, not 1984. 84 people. And so it was a teeny tiny high school, and there were multiple kids in my class who had been married 5 years later and had kids.
Oh, my.
And there were some kids who were even worried that they weren't pregnant yet. Because again, I went to school with a lot of Mormons.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
right, like there's a very strong pressure in Mormon culture to get married, have kids, have lots of kids very immediately. And I know at least a couple of them who are divorced now. Many for, I'm sure they were all for very good reasons. It's very difficult to get divorced as a Mormon. And
I didn't even know there's a way to
can.
do that.
You can, but it's extremely stigmatized.
Okay.
And people can, like, it's one of those things that can like really ostracize people from their church environments, from their communities altogether. So then like I thought I was gonna be like married immediately out of undergrad and have kids by the time I was 21, 22. I thought I would have my first kid at 22. I did not, thankfully. I waited a lot longer than that because my partner is very sensible. But we did get engaged when I was 20.
Okay.
So I was still an undergrad at that point. So I like came back from spring break with a ring. My sorority members were like quickly getting this like candle together so they could do a ritual, and they were like, "Well, somebody didn't tell us that we would have done this earlier," and I was just like, "Thanks, guys." So it was like it's a very common thing. Like I think a couple of my sorority sisters also who were like more Orthodox or conservative Jewish. They would like one of them was married by a matchmaker twice.
Okay.
Another one of them had like was there another one who did a matchmaker too? I don't remember. But, like she was pregnant way before I was, and she was younger than me by like 2 or 3 years. So lots of people like doing the get married young thing on purpose in the 21st century. Right? Like it's a decision to do that these days.
Yes.
Even 15 years ago. So the fact that people were doing it at like a more common rate seemed to, like lots of college sweethearts and things like that who, like my youth group leader from my dorm days, like had his college sweetheart and they got married almost immediately after graduating.
Okay.
So lots of that kind of stuff. I got married immediately after graduation to a man I'm still married to, happily. It's fine. Hi, dear. He's never going to watch this. Probably why we're still together, so he can maintain his sanity. But, when I went to, I graduated in June. I turned 22 that July. I got married. We got legally married in August. Came back for a white wedding in October. But we moved to Spokane in September. Mm-hmm. So that was like our first space of being on our own. And between, I think just before we'd gotten engaged, I had been in my Wikipedia rabbit hole. I had been doing my research, and in that space, I had discovered Quakerism, and I was like, well, this is going to be another fun, fundy research days. Like, how messed up are the Quakers? It turns out not very.
Really?
They're actually quite sensible, in the way of they're not very high control at all. They're very low control. And part of that is because core to the Quakerism theology is a sense of autonomy. So, there's no centralized. Quakers were most famously the resistance for various wars because their whole thing is pacifism. Mm-hmm. They are pacifists to the core. That is the centralized part of their theology. Another part of their theology is they don't have a creed or a canon. It turns out that Quakers are 70% Christian, 30% not. Okay. And I found that
is not something I knew at all.
Right? So it was once I learned that, I was like,
what are they?
Quakers around here? And there were.
Okay.
There were Quakers in Orange County,
wow.
Right next to the Santa Ana airport.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I went to that meeting for a little bit, and they had a little bit of they call it programmed versus unprogrammed. Mm-hmm. And so I went to an unprogrammed meeting once, which is basically just group meditation. You're sitting there in silence for 40 minutes, and if you feel compelled to speak, then you stand up and you say the thing that you feel compelled to say, and then you sit back down. And then people meditate on it for a couple of minutes. You wait until, and then you're supposed to just receive it. You don't respond to it. Mm. And so then a lot of people just sort of receive it, they mull on it, and then, if somebody else feels compelled to speak however many minutes minutes later, they stand up, they say their piece, and so on and so forth. And that is common. I went to an unprogrammed meeting in Spokane when I was there for grad school, and it was the same thing. But both of these groups also had programmed meetings.
Okay.
So that's your more typical church service. Quakers come from a Christian tradition, so that's why you have a lot of like Christian language, like Christian-esque language that people still come to, but it's not exclusive by any means. And some churches will use it more than others. So the Orange Grove Friends meeting in Pasadena, from what I remember, is not particularly like Jesus-y about it all. The whole thing about not having a canon is that nobody has to have, you don't have to have like a pastor to access the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
The Holy Spirit can mean whatever the fuck you want it to mean.
Alrighty.
You're gonna bleep these out, right? But yeah, it can mean whatever the heck you want it to mean, and then you can, and then you sort of like you decide on your own terms how you want to access that spirit.
Okay.
So it's very much a self-defined sense of spirituality, and
but it's like a Christian belief structure of the universe that they believe in.
No. There's no like. I think the thing is that they don't like. They're very Schrodinger's cat about it.
Okay.
Like there could be a heaven, there could not be a heaven. I don't know, but it's definitely influenced by the writings of George Fox.
Okay.
Some dude who was a Quaker a long ass time ago. People like him. I don't know much about him if I'm being honest, but he's a big deal in Quaker world. And but yeah, again, it's a lot of like pacifist language that coming back from like early Quakers. So all of that kind of comes down. Quakers are like protesters by nature in a lot of ways. So like from my understanding, there was like a large movement of like Quaker resistance to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So I discovered like Quakerism, got married, went to Spokane, was living there for a while, and this was the first time that I'd lived outside of convenient driving range of my parents in my life. So at this point, keep in mind, I've never lived by myself.
Okay.
I had never fully supported myself before. I probably still didn't at that point because I think I was like living off other people supporting me in a lot of ways. But, in myself a little bit, but not as much until my second year. And then I finally got a job after that, and I was just like, yes, I got this. But yeah, so I was there doing my MFA, and when you're in MFA school, I don't know if you know this about writers, but a lot of us are gay. But I think a lot of it too is like in Spokane, pretty much everyone is white. So like if you're a minority, you're probably queer. Like that's the minority population in Spokane, Washington is queer. That's a joke. There's lots of racial minorities, but they're just less prevalent than queer folks who are willing to be out.
They're more noticeable.
Yes, especially in creative writing programs because poets, man. But yeah, so there's I think that was the first time that I saw like a long-term, like a few long-term queer relationships.
Uh-huh.
That's where I learned about the concept of polyamory, and I saw several people in poly relationships. That was the first time I'd seen bisexual people. Well, that's not true. That was the first time I had seen a bisexual couple or a bisexual person in a relationship with both a man and a woman at different points. And I knew someone who was bi, although she referred to herself as pan, in my undergrad days, but I didn't see her dating a lot of people, and so it was a different concept to see this person I didn't know already.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about her. And then I was like, oh, she was with this person, and now she's with this person. I'm really confused right now. And then I was like, oh, right, bi is a thing.
Yeah, it's the first time you saw it in action.
Yes, exactly. Without anyone putting a label on it before I interacted with it.
Okay, I
right?
gotcha.
Which is a whole different experience. So It's at this point that I'm like writing this, like the Giver version of this book.
Okay.
And going through all of it, the protagonist's love interest is a boy at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Going through all this stuff, and I'm trying to figure out like what my life is without my family, and like without the support networks that I had down in California, and in a lot of ways, I'm trying to figure out what I believe religiously, because for Christmas I would go back home. And I would go to the Christmas Eve candlelight service, and we would sing Silent Night, and I would see my first grade teacher, and like a couple other kids I went to primary school with, and that would be that. And then I would go home and put the candle wax back in the bin and do it all again the following year. I'd stopped going to Easter services because I had panic attacks, and that was not fun. They showed like a bit of the Passion of the Christ one year, and I just straight up hyperventilating. It was
my Catholic church had the Stations of the Cross in stained glass around the entire thing.
Wait, tell me about the Stations of the Cross.
If I remember this right, and if I have my correct information, the Stations of the Cross are a series of things that Jesus went through during his execution.
Oh, right.
But I don't think those things are necessarily in the Bible. I think it was anti-Jewish propaganda during the Spanish Inquisition that was created. And that's what was on the stained glass windows in my church.
Send me the Wikipedia article on that later so I can deep dive into it.
The Stations of the Cross, what is it? Where did it come from?
That's
Maybe I'll post a link down below.
Is that a thing that YouTube people say? Down below?
Yeah, down below, because there's a link. Yeah, and leave comments and a little thumbs up down below, too.
Oh my god, anyway, yeah, that's very depressing. I'm sorry to go through that. Especially like the kids, man. It always starts with the kids, and then you're just like, why are we putting children through this? Like later on, when you're looking back on all of it, you're just like, as a child, you're like, this is what I must do. Like I am a part of this giant, beautiful, big thing. And then as an adult, you're like,
what the hell was all that crap?
Yeah, like, just insanity. Anyway, so I'm like trying to figure out like what I'm doing in Spokane. I'm going to this evangelical Quaker meeting, which is mostly I tend to attend the programmed one because it's more comfortable for me. But occasionally I did do the unprogrammed one. But undiagnosed ADHD and like 40 minutes of silence is a very difficult.
And then every once in a while, somebody just popping off some kind of comment for you.
Yeah,
that didn't help.
Actually, no, it actually was extremely helpful because I feel like a lot of the experience of it is like, you walk into this like sanctuary type place and you just sort of like, you're like, okay, I'm here, I'm meditating, and I am meditating, and I'm meditating, and I'm meditating, and I'm meditating. And then someone finally says something. So it's kind of like you sort of like settle into all of these thoughts that you've had throughout the week, and it kind of gives you a space to have those thoughts and to just sort of like let them exist however you're going to let them exist. And you're sort of like accepting that you don't know what to do with them. So like whatever kind of worries have been happening throughout the week, or stressors about the upcoming week, whatever it might be, or like big existential questions, which is the main reason that I even go to any kind of religious service now, is to like have a designated space to have the religious questions and for me not to know the answers to them. Not religious questions, existential questions, and to not know the answers to them. So now I attend a Unitarian church, which is basically like Quakerism, but with more excitement. Lots more singing and less evangelism. And
Okay.
Like, yeah, because Quakers can be evangelical or not evangelical. This one in Spokane was an evangelical Quaker meeting. And it was very clear to me that I was a very liberal person in Spokane, Washington at that moment, because I went to this first meeting and I was like, well, Quakers can be non-Christian. And then like one of the people there was just like, well, those people are wrong. Like, I'm pretty sure that's not right. But I like secretly asked a few other people if like that's how everyone felt, and they were like, no. I was like, okay, cool, just that one lady.
There's always one.
There's always one. So at that point, I finished the draft on this book, and I was trying to. I was having some struggles in my very, very, very young marriage. A lot of which had to do with my own sense of sexuality, because I could not figure out, like, when you're growing up with the introduction to kisses as peach, prune, and alfalfa, you don't understand what pleasure is, or you don't even accept that you deserve pleasure at all, right?
I know a lot of churches teach that if it's fun, it's wrong.
Yes, and there's an element to, like, growing up fundy that's like, you're not here to experience the pleasures of life. The pleasures are there after you have done everything else. So, like, after you have worked and you have suffered, if you experience any kind of pleasure, if it's through food or through going to the beach or whatever, like, you know, that's just luck, and be grateful that you have it. The world is beautiful. But that's not why you're here. You're not here to be in the world because it's beautiful. You're here to serve God. And in serving God, you present yourself in a specific way, and you convince people of specific things, and you figure out how to get other people to also be saved. So as a kid, I was, like, trying to bring my friends to church. Also as a kid, I believed in conversion therapy. Yeah, didn't know that's what it was called, but somebody explained the concept of being gay as, like, a mental illness. So, like, you know, your brain is just doing things that most people's brains don't normally. And in the same way that you would give somebody medication for depression, you give people medication for being gay or for same-sex attraction. And so, you know, it's just a difference. It's nothing for them to be, you know, ashamed of. And we love all of God's children. We're not, you know, it's love the sinner, hate the sin. Yep. 100,000%. And at that point, I think I genuinely thought this was a kind thing to do. This was a compassionate thing to do. So, right, and, like, I was a really, like, I was a little baby, like, sensitive child.
Yeah,
like,
you were unaware.
I was unaware, and
you were trying to do the right thing, and you were misguided.
Exactly, and I think that so many people who are in those things right now, when you throw a label like conversion therapy at them, it's a hit, and it's like you're telling them that they're bad people. Yes. And that's not the case.
You need to tell them that they're mistaken.
I don't think that's the right way to go about it, but ultimately speaking, like, it's again that concept of people trying to take care of their communities. Yes. Trying to spare them the most painful thing that they can possibly imagine, but then not having the exposure to other people's experiences that is required of understanding that the worst possible thing that you can imagine is not the worst possible thing somebody else can imagine, and that yours is not worse than theirs. And I think the only way to, like, start to get these ideas out there is to like, explain it from somebody who believed that. So I'm, like, you know, I'm at this point where I'm trying to understand this concept of what it's like to be a young married woman. Like, how much am I supposed to put out? How much am I supposed to not? When does obligation turn into non-consent? When does, like, what are you, like, if you were only in the space of obligation, does that mean you don't like your partner? Does that mean you're not attracted to your partner? At the same time, why is it that every time I think about sex, I would rather be doing it with a woman? why? So at that point, I'm having a straight up gay panic.
Okay.
Where I'm like, well, I must be gay. Like, now I have to tell my husband that I think I'm gay. Oh, baby. So, and at the time, I'm like, just deny, because I hate the sin. You can convert it out of you, it's okay.
Conversion therapy, compared to what I grew up with, is actually liberal.
Wow.
Because in my church, as far as I can recall, in my Catholic church in the 1970s, sex did not exist. The babies came by stork, or you found it in a cabbage patch. And if you touch yourself, you're going to hell twice over. So, yeah. So, gay people were not a thing to be discussed because they didn't exist.
Yeah. 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 How old were you when you came out? I forgot.
I was 26 when I finally came out to myself.
That's right. I'm 26 too. We had that moment before. Okay.
26.
Nailed it. Yeah. Mine was in a therapy meeting with my husband and my therapist. My 60-year-old therapist who was like, bisexual is a thing. And I was like, oh yeah. I forgot about that. Even though I knew that woman in grad school.
Well, you know what?
Bisexuality is for other people, not for me.
As a bisexual man, I've lived in a world where I'm not supposed to exist at all.
That's a whole other thing, man.
Just not even supposed to. And you know what? The crazy thing is that one of my earliest gay experiences with a character on TV was Jody from the TV show Soap, played by Billy Crystal. And he's gay right out of the gate.
Out of the gate?
Right there. He's secretly dating a football player who's in the NFL.
Classic.
And he actually goes through a whole series of episodes where he's thinking about changing his sex so he can be with this man. So he's going to go through a sex change so he can be with this guy.
Wow.
But then later on in the series, after this guy dumps him because he just can't handle that, he's got a career to think about. Jody moves in with a lesbian. And they both have a series of unpleasant relationships and end up sleeping together and having a baby. And they still identify both of those characters as gay. Neither of them are... They have a baby together, and they're still both considered gay. Per the show, per the characters on the show, per the society that I lived in.
And they could still be at this point in time. Yeah. I can see a different version of those characters where they really are both gay, and they're trying out this relationship with each other, and seeing what it's like, and then being like, guess not.
Well, it wasn't like they were experimenting. It was like they fell into an emotional moment together. And it's like, dude, well, if you can fall into that emotional moment, guess what? You're bisexual.
But I don't know. There's a lot of hetero-romantic, bi-romantic, you can sort of be both and neither at the same time, but it's I think that the binary version of explaining away that concept is a disservice to the giant web of complexity that is sexuality and gender.
I'm not saying now you have to just consider dating everybody because I've labeled you bisexual. I'm saying that, nah, dude, you can love a woman too, therefore you're not gay. You're bisexual.
Yeah. There's a different word for it.
You're a boy. You're a boy preferring bisexual. So
interesting. I feel like my experience has always been very I think it might just depend on what point in my life I'm at or how exhausted I am. But there have been times in my life where I'm just I only want ladies, and then at other points I'm I only want dudes, and at times it's I don't want anyone, just leave me alone. And I don't know. It's I feel like I go through phases, but other people are very much yes, I'm oriented towards insert gender here, and then whatever. But anyway. So yeah, and do the grad school thing out of sheer stubborn will. I stay married to my spouse, And, we're working through things. It becomes very clear when I'm in grad school that I'm also going through a lot of panic attacks that are very much anxiety related, which were nothing new. I had been going through those since high school, but they were getting worse, and they were lasting longer. The recovery time was taking longer. They were more frequent, and so we were like, okay, well, like I realized on some level that I was still attracted to him, but I didn't. I think there was an element of just sort of like, again, like internet deep dive, like what do I owe my partner? What do I owe them sexually? What do I owe them emotionally? Like, what do they owe me? What, these were questions that hadn't really been covered in premarital counseling.
Yeah.
And like, they're not questions that have decided answers.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of whether you're religious or not, people had so many different viewpoints on them. But I was still coming from like a Christian fundy background, which sort of, I'd had this narrative in my brain the whole time of like, not only are you not gay, you also like have to please your husband sexually. You have to, be like, I think there was like a Reddit thread or something that I read that was like, you can delay sex, but you can't deny it. And to some extent, I'm kind of like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Like, you don't, if you are delaying it, then that's kind of saying no, because it's like not right now, and that person's still honoring it. So like, that's a form of denial, but it's
and
more
so
like a see you later
if your
kind
spouse
of thing.
goes through a change of life and they're no longer interested in sex, or if they suffer an injury, yeah.
No, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, this is a whole thing.
It was just a really like, it was a really weird place to be without much guidance.
Yeah.
And like he'd had the experiences of his friends, I'd had the experiences of mine, and our friends come from vastly different cultural backgrounds, specifically around religion. And religion is very much synced up with the concept of sexuality, especially in fundy groups. So it's a big deal if you're queer. It's a big deal. Like, sex in general is a big deal in funding cultures. And more often than not, the problem is that you aren't having sex when and how whatever spiritual leader or guidance says that you should be. But that means, in other words, you're not having your sexual actions and desires controlled.
Okay.
So that's where high control environment comes in. Whether it's somebody directly telling you you can't have sex with this person, or you have to have sex with this person, or somebody saying, you know what, we all make our own choices, but at the end of the day, it's you who has to live with those choices, and that'll be between you and God when you go back, and I'll be praying for you. Right? Those are two different forms of control. One is more overt, one is more covert.
Yes.
And either way, you're in a situation where you don't know what to do, and you feel very isolated and ashamed. And it's one of the worst things you compare shame with is sexuality, because then you get into the self-hatred, you get into the I don't know what to do, you get into the internet rabbit holes that sometimes can lead you to like incels, or like, what's that one cult in San Francisco where everyone was just having sex with everybody else, and it was like a whole thing. I don't know, probably multiple ones in San Francisco.
Well, Charles Manson had something like that going.
That one. And just sort of like all kinds of things like that. You can fall in any one direction, and the main problem is that people have very specific ideas about what should or should not happen in a sexual context, and especially in a parent-child relationship, especially one influenced as heavily by culture, in my case Latin culture, and religion, in my case Protestant, fundy-leaning Protestantism, evangelical Protestantism. Like I was walking away from the Protestant religion at that point. that was considered a failure or a betrayal in a lot of ways. So to be able to, to have that sort of be like an element of like my parents losing me, and then to sort of like, I couldn't also be queer on top of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
Everyone's a little bit bisexual.
Piling
sometimes.
a little too much on your parents.
What?
Being queer and leaving the church at the same time.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of isolation for me. And also, when people would ask me about it, I would just sort of be like, well, I'm married to this guy. I obviously at some point was attracted to him. I'm still attracted to him. Like we're able, like in times of happiness, we're very happy. Like I picked him for many, many reasons, all of which are still completely valid. But when you're young and you're freshly married and you're freshly away from your like families of origin, like physically and emotionally, and all those things happen at the same time, it's just a wild experience. And then it's easy to sort of like, you're sort of forced to reset in terms of what you decide to believe, both for yourself and within your family, your new family unit. But two, it's also this like separation game where, depending on how confident about yourself you are at the point that you leave it, you can either get sucked really hard back into, or you can gracefully come into your own away from it, or you can burn it all down. And those are kind of like the three options. And I think I mostly did the like, I'm going to get sucked back into it and burn it all down at either points in time, like at various points in time. And I think that's partially what was causing the panic attacks, honestly.
Oh, wow.
That and, being overprogrammed. Because autism, ADHD. Like, non-medicated in either way.
Smart people's brains do stuff like that.
Just people's brains in general, but
yes.
Yeah. So I got a job in Pasadena after I graduated, and somewhere in that, while I was at this job, I was starting to revise my book during my spare time. And I just wanted to feel like connected to being a writer, because my job had nothing to do with like creative writing necessarily. Depending on how you feel, like how you classify expense reports, I think in some ways you could consider it creative writing, because sometimes you got to be creative with those justifications. But ultimately, I just wanted like a sense of being in the publishing world again. And so I was just like revising. And I think I got to the third revision when I was like, I kept like having these, I had this like one story I wrote in grad school about like this like young Mormon woman who was like getting married on her wedding day, and she like had to buy like lingerie under her garments for under her garments.
Okay.
Or she wanted to buy lingerie for under her garments or something like that. And so she like goes to the store, and then this like shopkeeper's flirting with her, and she's like hitting on her, but then like the Mormon girl doesn't really like, can't really tell or whatever, and then she like ultimately just sort of like walks away from her own wedding for this like lingerie store person. And I don't even remember if that's how it ends, but I wrote this when I was still in grad school, so I was only there for 2 years. This is like my second year being married, and I'm like writing this story about this gay lady who is like very clearly considering walking away from her heteronormative, like church-endorsed relationship. So there was a lot of like big questioning happening. Finally got here, got a therapist, and then I think as I was, like, two things happened at the same time. One, I had started another revision of this book, and then decided that my male deuteragonist was going to be a girl. And that's when the whole book opened up. It was like, that's what this is about. It's about this like sense of, existing in this space where I grew up. It was about finding, your sense of self when you're still trapped in it, despite the fact that you can never be that version of yourself, and having to hide and hide and hide and hide and hide, and be willing to do it. because you love everybody around you so much that you would rather prioritize them than you.
Yes.
Which leads ultimately to suicidal ideation, which I had definitely experienced throughout my adolescence.
Wow.
Frequently. And, you know, to me that was just sort of like a normal part of existence, so I didn't know that's what it was. And then I got medicated and it was like, oh, you don't have to live like this. That's amazing. I didn't know that. Like, who would have thunk? So just like, yeah, all of those things kind of came together at the same time. And then also I came out because of that lovely therapy session where a 60-plus-year-old woman told me, you can be bi, that is a thing that exists.
You're allowed to be bisexual.
Yes. Yes. Which I'm very angry that I did not know myself. Especially being the liberal, like, person that I was.
Well, yeah, you were very liberal considering all the background that you'd gone through prior to that point.
Yes, and I think that's something that people forget for, like, people who are deconstructing.
Yes.
Like, it takes a long time to unlearn all that stuff. And so that's a major factor of, like, why I wanted to write this book in general, because it's so hard to put yourself in that mindset of somebody who is willingly, despite the tax and toll it takes on themselves, going through these rituals. Like, the whole point of this protagonist is that she volunteers herself to be burned at the stake. She is literally a human sacrifice. And there are plenty of groups out there that have willing human sacrifices. And, you know, at some point, like in ancient history, my understanding of the Aztecs is that there were willing human sacrifices in the Aztec periods. Not all of them by any stretch of the imagination, and some of the willing ones ultimately did not want to at the end in the last moments.
There's that game where the losing team all gets beheaded. I think
What?
it is. Yeah, it's an Aztec thing. Yeah,
That's gonna be
looks a lot like
it's an Aztec thing.
It looks a lot like basketball with the hoop on its side.
Oh my god!
And I have
often
yes, if you lose, you die, and I think it was an honor to die.
Yeah.
And I really have to wonder about the mentality of the people who got into that arena to do that.
Yeah.
Some of them were
very gladiator-esque.
Yeah, some of them were like captured, like war POWs at the time, but others were volunteers. So like, what the heck, dude?
Which is, I think, very much akin to like the Suzanne Collins Hunger Games series.
Yes.
Like so much, except that one's with children, which is even more grotesque. And like, but some of those kids volunteer.
Yes.
Right? Like for the honor and the.
Some of them train their whole life for it.
Right. And then that's the honor and the integrity. And then others are forced into it. Some are only volunteering to save somebody else. And it's the motivations for getting into these pits of belief vary so much. But, you know, I also think that like that's the like incredibility of, that's not a word, but like that's how incredible like the human will is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is willing to contort itself into all kinds of things, some of which are incredibly violent, for the sake of doing what you think is right, for the sake of morality, for the sake of making sense out of the chaos that is existing as a human. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're a complicated species.
Yeah.
I think I like what Quark said on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, when he explained human nature as, we seem like we're really good, happy folk, but you take away our creature comforts and we're worse than the Klingons.
I gotta watch Star Trek.
Yeah. You gotta watch Deep Space Nine. There's a lot of great philosophy and
is that
political.
Star Trek?
That is Star Trek.
Okay.
It's my favorite Star Trek. I'm watching it probably for the 20th time right now, the whole series.
I have heard lots of excellent things about that one in particular. I always forget which one it is, but Deep Space Nine, DSN.
You definitely want to watch for Quark and his family, because his mother, they're the most misogynistic society you can possibly imagine. The Ferengi. But over the course of the series, and
I live in 21st century United States, so that's saying a
well,
lot.
their women aren't allowed to wear clothes, own property, or go outside or speak to strangers.
Oof.
Yes, and the males make contracts to marry people. So, and if you go to visit somebody, their naked females will be just around the house, but they're not supposed to talk to you. Yeah, it's
this
very.
Is like the children of God.
The character Nog, which is Quark's nephew, is the greatest arc story of all Star Trek, argued by many fans. But yeah, the patriarchy does come down over the course of the spoiler alert.
Mm-hmm.
The patriarchy does come down before the end of the Deep Space Nine run, and it's all Quark's family's fault. Mm-hmm. It is a wonderful story, and it's hilarious. Every time I get to a Ferengi episode, I'm like, a Ferengi episode.
That's how you know it's something that just like makes you happy. It's
yes.
Like you're just like, can't wait.
Yeah, I love it when justice comes to a society or an individual. So yeah. That the Ferengi ending on Deep Space Nine, love it.
Endorsement received.
So, what has acceptance done for you?
A lot, because it has been the difference between wanting to exist in my reality and not. It has been the difference between hope and no hope. And those are parallel things, right? Mm-hmm. Like, wanting to exist equals hope. Not wanting to exist equals no hope.
Yes.
Like, when you can't see a way out, like, I'm the kind of person who's just like, I'm not playing the game then. Like, if there's no way out, and I'm trapped, what is the point other than eternal suffering? So for me, it was just like, oh, there are other people who exist like this. There are other people who live their lives like this. There are other people who have stories and experiences and advice and support and understanding and frameworks, and it just opened up everything to be like, this is a valid way of existing, and I just haven't explored it yet. So it was like a whole new book just like magically appeared of like, you know, a new portion of the how-to manual of life. Mm-hmm. It was like I had like kicked it out and just never considered it before. And there's just been this empty space there this whole time. And like, bam, resources galore. So then I was able to get involved in my work's queer ERG, and from there I was able to meet so many incredible, kind, compassionate people of all parts of the gender and sexuality spectrum. And they provided exactly that. And it was a lot of imposter syndrome at first, but now I'm definitely, like, now I'm at a point where, like, I am providing that for other people too. Excellent. Who are in similar spaces, and part of doing that is writing this book and making it available to the 16-year-olds who are going through the same thing I was going through when I was 16. The ones who have their heads deep in the sand. The 22-year-olds who are married and are very, very confused as to what the heck is happening in their brains, and, you know, who are doubting whether their entire life has been a lie. Yeah. Or their entire life will continue to be a lie. Because having to live as a straight person thinking that you're gay feels like a lie that you have to keep telling over and over and over and over again, and it takes so much strain. It's exhausting. And when you have to do other things like have a job, like, yes. It's really hard to keep doing
Life is hard enough without this nonsense on the side.
So ultimately I feel like so much of that has been finding language to be able to affirm my existence.
Yes.
And that has been everything.
Yeah, and just having other people that can say, yes, I'm like you, so you're allowed to exist. You're allowed to be like this.
Yes, you're allowed to exist.
I exist, you're allowed to exist too.
Yep, 100%.
Yep.
100%. And then just sort of like accepting the more nuanced permutations of of species variety of humans.
Yeah, that's why I was not able to embrace my bisexuality for such a long time. So it was there. It was there the whole time, and I just kept it boxed up and just didn't interact with it.
Yeah.
And until I was of an age where I looked at a man's butt and said, "Wow, that's cute." And I was like, I should look at all those things that I've done over the course of my life and maybe come to grips with the reality of who I am. And from the moment I asked that question to the time I actually came to grips with it was about a year. So it just had to simmer, just had to sit there for a while.
Yeah, on the back burner to just be like, okay, is it safe to take off the top a little bit, take off the lid?
Is it? I've given myself permission. I've given myself permission, but it's just going to sit over there until I feel comfortable with the permission I've given myself.
Yeah. Yeah, feeling comfortable with that sense of permission and like freedom.
Yeah.
Feeling comfortable with freedom, I think, is a big part of it.
And I was completely alone during this journey. And I was already out the other side when I fell in with a Rocky Horror Picture Troupe and had my very first boyfriend in my adult life.
Of course it's Rocky Horror. Of course it's Rocky Horror. Everyone I know who's partaken in Rocky Horror in some way or another is queer.
Yes, well...
Except for my one straight friend who just has lots of queer friends. Like, that's just the theater kids. And then, like,
they're just queer friendly.
Yes. Friendly. But I love it.
Right.
Speaking of queer media.
Yeah, let's talk about some queer media. What queer media would you recommend?
You tell me, because you started out with the Star Trek thing.
Oh, well...
And then Rocky Horror.
Well, do not go to Star Trek for queer media because it's really upsetting in Discovery because every queer couple, one's either a ghost or trapped in another dimension or something. It's like, for crying out loud, let the gay couples be together. But I would strongly recommend the very first gay media that I ever consumed as a kid, which was... The Gay Deceivers, a 1969 film, so it was made a year before I was born. And it's about these two guys who pretend to be gay in order to get to not go to Vietnam. And then they think that this officer from the recruitment station is tracking them, so they have to move into a gay community and pretend to be gay until he stops coming around. And back then, if you were gay, you couldn't just live anywhere because they were allowed to throw you out of your apartment for being gay. So there was a whole gay complex where all the gay people lived in California together. And everything that happened to these guys, it's like you get to have the crappiest side of the gay experience without actually being gay. So you're a straight guy. Enjoy your education. So it's a really good movie, and it's also really funny, too.
I'm going to have to give it a
Great ending.
watch.
Great ending.
Yes.
It's free on YouTube.
Okay. All right. The Gay BC universe? Is that what you said?
The Gay Deceivers.
The Gay Deceivers.
Yeah, they're pretending to be gay. They're not gay. They're deceivers. They're deceiving the army so they don't go
Deceivers.
to Deceiver.
Oh,
Deception.
I thought it was like DC Universe. Deceivers. It's like either it's in Washington, D.C. or it's part of like the non-Marvel. And I'm caught up now.
No, it's not Marvel or
the
DC.
Gay Deceivers. Okay.
Yeah.
That's on my list. Steven Universe. 100,000%. If you haven't seen it, you should. It is one of the... Oh, also Owl House.
I've seen that.
It's fantastic. Just like that. The protagonist in Owl House is just like, yes, that's me. That's me. And then One Day at a Time, the reboot, same concept. There's like the outspoken young girl in this Cuban family. And fun fact, my last name used to be Castro, like Fidel, but no relation.
Okay.
And I'm not Cuban, but I like to call him Uncle Fiddy. I probably shouldn't say that on the internet, but whatever. So, they One Day at a Time was the outspoken young like queer kid who's like coming out and like, you know, is trying to be like super supportive and like there for the underdog and the minority people and blah blah blah. And then is also just kind of like, I'm not marginalized enough. Like, my Catholic school says it's okay if we have a gay-straight alliance. What am I supposed to protest now? You're still a woman. Oh yeah, I'm a girl. Like, yeah, that kind of stuff. That's me. So like lots of things of the younger generations, but still very old by comparison to the younger kids these days. But Steven Universe is a big one. That one is a cartoon by Rebecca Sugar, who is a fantastic songwriter and storyteller. And I think they did the art. Did they do all of the art? I don't know. Probably not. It's a giant show, but yeah, they have a movie. It's fantastic.
They did all the work by themselves. Their wrists are so tired now.
Well, the series has a movie, and the movie is really fantastic. And it just follows the story of this like kid who is it handles gender and sexuality in a very like not even matter of fact way. It's just like it's just a circumstance, and no one talks about it because it's so normal. No one cares to bring it up. So it's like this little boy lives with these 3 gems who are like alien beings who are masquerading as humans, and so they have like their human selves on or whatever. One of them is literally a fusion of a ruby and a sapphire together to make a garnet, and she turns into blue and reddish, pinkish, like a pinkish red, which bisexual flag, and she, and then she sort of like finds herself in, she's like literally like these 2 people combined. She only exists because they are in love with each other, and one of them is like a princess and the other one is like a soldier, and they're like one of them saved the other. I think the princess saved the soldier or something like that, and so now they're both like this one being of Garnet. Like one of the gems was in love with the main character's mother. It was like a whole thing. But anyway, the TLDR of all of it is just that they handle same gender relationships like it's not a thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is just delightful.
As
I like it when
be.
things are just not a thing. Yeah.
Yep.
It's just so not a thing because it should not be a thing.
Exactly.
And then Owl House is just like a moment of hope and delight. And again, like, queer relationships are not a big deal.
And they shouldn't be. They should just be what they are.
Yeah. And then in terms of books, We Set the Dark on Fire. Anything by Taylor Kemahia, it's Tehlor, Kay, and then last name is Mejia. Anything that he's done has been just phenomenal. And I read his most recent like adult novel, and I was done. I was just in tears. I was sobbing. I was just like, they're reconciled. It was like this like white like half Mexican young woman who was also half white, and she like finds her estranged grandmother, like Mexican grandmother, and like gets to know like the Mexican side of her family that she never got to, and it was like the acceptance, the love. It's like Encanto all over again. So yeah, if you want to sob, you should read that.
All right, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to be the end of our discussion here today. Thank you so much for coming here. And thank you all for watching this very first episode of Writers Talk About Stuff, where writers talk about stuff. And we just talked about a whole bunch of stuff.
We did.
Thank you very much to Rie Lee. Get her book, Vessel. It's available everywhere?
Except Amazon.
Except Amazon. But look for it online. You can get a copy of this thing.
We'll give you links.
We'll give you links below. Look below for the links while you're clicking the thumbs up and leaving a comment.
Up and down.
All right. Have a good day. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Feel it.